Hello and welcome, my fine friends. The day is finally upon us. After hinting at it for so long, it's finally time I finished this theory. But this theory doesn't just affect BB. In fact, this theory goes beyond. Somehow, not only have I come up with one of the most shocking revelations we've ever seen on this show, and not only one that builds off my most popular theory ever, but one that changes everything we knew about the ending. Cue the intro, baby! Well, it has been quite a while since we've discussed Death Note, hasn't it? Well, considering how long it's taken me to get to this theory, I'm guessing there are at least a few of you who have been a bit starved for Death Note content. Well, don't worry, I got you covered, because not only do I have this crazy theory to share, but there's actually another Death Note video I made. I put it up on the second channel Duo Stuff, and it covers Death Note's many appearances in games, including an ending that you won't want to miss. If you're still hungry for more Death Note after this video, and need a reprieve from this crazy theory, I'd recommend heading over there, after this video of course. Link to the video will be on the end card and in the description below, so I hope to see you there. For now though, it's time to get down to business. Last year I talked about the mysterious individual by the name of BB, or Beyond Birthday. At the end of the video, I hinted at a planned theory involving him, and today I finally make good on that promise. To my utter shock, however, what was originally intended to just be some fun little theory turned into something much bigger, something that will change the ending of Death Note as we know it. This theory builds off some previous theories, so while I will repeat necessary information from those, I'd recommend watching them either before or after if you want the full lowdown. Anyways, no more messing around, let's get into this. BB is a bizarre entity. He comes from the novel Death Note, Another Note, which while not specifically shown in animated form is mentioned in the anime a couple times. During the events of the book, BB attempts to pull one over on L by giving him a selection of mysteries that by the end were intended to go unsolved. Now that's all interesting, but one crazy thing about BB almost never gets mentioned in comparison. What am I talking about exactly? Well, as we find out in the novel, BB apparently has somehow been born with the Shinigami eyes. We know he has them as well because somehow he was able to know that every single victim in Another Note was going to die right before he messed with their bodies. That's a little too specific to be a coincidence. But yeah, anyways, what do I mean by born with the Shinigami eyes? Did he not just get them from a Shinigami? Well, no, not at all. He's never even met a Shinigami, and he certainly never got a Death Note either. As explained in the book, he was just born with it, and that he's just had it for most of his life. Now this is a little bizarre now, isn't it? I mean, it's a pretty big deal, but we never get an explanation of exactly why BB would have this to begin with. It's almost hilarious that there's so little information about it, meaning that we literally only are left to theorize as to how he would get them. Well, how about we get around to actually trying to answer that then? So, we know that contact with a Shinigami is off the table, and that if he was born with it, then there had to be something to cause that. But we also have to take note of how uncommon this whole ability seems to be. I mean, whatever caused this to occur has to be pretty uncommon as we don't really hear anything similar happening anywhere else. Also, the process likely needs to involve a Shinigami in some way, even if not by direct contact. I mean, considering they are literally the Shinigami eyes, it only makes sense. So then, what event would happen very infrequently, would involve Shinigamis in some way, and is showcased in any of the other material? Well, it's not hard to figure this out, especially considering it literally shows up in the anime itself. There's a whole arc surrounding the character Rem, Misa's previous Shinigami. Previous not because she stopped using the Death Note, but previous because Rem died. As we find out, there are actually a couple of ways Shinigami can die in the series. If they fall in love with a human, they can die, that's for sure, but the show actually also states that Shinigami have a lifespan as well, and if they don't off humans frequently enough, then they will pass on. Both of these cases are extremely uncommon for a number of reasons. Firstly, Shinigami don't fall in love with humans all that often. Secondly, considering they have a way to infinitely extend their lifespan, it would take quite a lot for a Shinigami to die like that. Thirdly, well, there's just not a whole lot of Shinigami to begin with. It seems like there's only dozens of them, which is a far cry from how many humans there are. So, if we're looking for an event that would fit the previously stated criteria for causing BB's situation, this certainly is not a bad place to start. Considering how infrequent it is for a Shinigami to die, it wouldn't exactly be surprising if cases like BB are as rare as they are. But then there's the question, how did BB get the eyes to begin with? Did the Shinigami pass on their eyes or what? Well, yes, but also no. You see, I theorize that when a Shinigami dies, it likely gets reincarnated as a human. Firstly, we actually never really find out what happens to Shinigami when they die. We have at least an idea of what happens to a human, but considering the Shinigami's elevated state over humans, it wouldn't make much sense for them to go to the same form of afterlife. Not to mention, considering how visually similar Shinigami are to humans, it's not too hard to see that there's some kind of connection there. They have similar body structures, have a stomach which, while not functioning anymore, is stated to be the same as a human's, just rotted out. Heck, Shinigami can even have genders, with Ryuk being a dude and Rem actually being a chick. And considering what they do all day, which is take the lifespan of humans, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that when they die, they become a human again, losing their memories in the process. And wouldn't the whole event make much more sense as a punishment? They spend all their time taking human lives, so wouldn't it work just too perfectly if they then become a human? But this time, with something that would likely torture them through their entire life, the Shinigami eyes. Getting to see the lifespans of all those around you, knowing when your family and friends will be taken from you. That sounds like quite a terrible punishment, and BB certainly feels that way, since his Shinigami eyes eventually caused him to go off the deep end. And so, I think it's not too far off to say that chances are, BB got his eyes because he's a reincarnation of someone who was previously a Shinigami. That's really the only sensible explanation as to why he would have these Shinigami eyes in the first place. This isn't some birth defect, this is a magical pair of eyes that only Shinigami can bestow upon humans. It has to come from somewhere, and reincarnation is what I think the case is here. So that's cool, we now know how BB got his eyes, but why does it matter then? I mean, BB is gone, so it's not like his eyes matter all that much right now, right? Well, people who have been watching this show for quite a while may recall I made a theory a while ago by the name of the Fate of Light. In this, I went on to prove that after his death at the hands of Nier, Light likely got reincarnated as a Shinigami. I went over a lot of stuff from his appearance to the Relight films and all of the evidence that would lead to this conclusion there, so I'm not going to go over all of this again in this video. I'll just leave that to you if you haven't watched it. Regardless, the end conclusion was that Light was reincarnated as a Shinigami, and at the end of Death Note Relight, he heads back down to Earth, implying that he likely will try and put the pieces back together. You see, he actually spawned with his memories intact, if busted up a little bit. And so we've established that Light has become a Shinigami, and considering the circumstances, it seems clear that Light intends on doing something. On its own, I think if a sequel to Death Note were made with this alone, I think it would lack quite a bit. I mean, part of the fun of the original series was the risk factor, how two individuals were essentially putting their lives on the line in a battle of wits in the hopes that they would prevail and enact their own form of justice. What exactly would you do then if Light was essentially invincible from harm via humans? And who's to say that Light even wants to remain a Shinigami, essentially an eternal example of his loss at the hands of Nier? But I mean, if he's stuck as a Shinigami, that's pretty much the nail in the coffin. He's stuck like that forever. Or he would be. As we've discussed, BB was likely the reincarnation of a Shinigami, implying that if a Shinigami were to die, they could too end up becoming a human again. You see where I'm going with this? What I'm implying is that if Light wanted to, it's fully possible for him to come back. But just coming back isn't good enough. We all know Light. He's not going to want to just leave things be and go back to a normal life. Now that Light has a body capable of roaming the human world, and one capable of gathering information and setting up plans, he now has the ability to plan out the revival of Kira. Think about how crazy a second season would be in this case. Light, after building and planning for years, including finding the names of Nier and everyone else in Whammy House, with his newly acquired Shinigami eyes, manages to leave a Death Note hidden in the human realm, specifically his own as a Shinigami. And then, by some crazy logic and planning, he manages to come back as a human, manages to relay the information to himself, and manages to get the Death Note back to his new body. Heck, he might not even need to go this far. As we've clearly seen with his new Shinigami form, Light has actually managed to retain his memories across existences. Unlike every other Shinigami, and unlike BB, when Light got reincarnated, he still had his memories intact even if they may have been a bit fuzzy. His planning might not even be needed, as he may be able to return to the human realm memories intact just like how he ended up as a Shinigami. And so, the god of the new world Kira himself reappears to cast judgment onto the world, with a new body in tow and a Death Note that is tied to no one but himself. And now, with the knowledge he has gained, including Nier's name along with anyone else from Whammy House who could stop him, he can rid himself of his opposers and attempt to take his place as god of the new world once again. But even crazier is that it actually may be possible to continue this cycle infinitely. Remember, in the Fate of Light, we discussed that the main user of the Death Note, as in the person who obtains ownership of the Death Note and not just any random Joe who touches the Death Note, becomes a Shinigami after death as well. This means that with enough planning, Light could technically keep this cycle going infinitely, popping up in different parts of the world, continuing his reign as Kira until his death, then reappearing as a Shinigami to restart the whole process. There's no way to truly get rid of him. No matter what occurs, he will reappear again. If anything, this is actually a better way of doing things than his original plans in the anime, because in this case, he will truly become a god. Watch out, criminals, the god of the new world is back, and this time, his reign will never cease. Well, that was probably the craziest theory I've ever made for this series. Well, after that, I imagine we all need a bit of a breather, huh? And we can get exactly that if we go to the video I posted on my second channel all about Death Note video games. Why don't you head on over there and check it out? I'd highly recommend staying until the end especially because, man, it's really something. Catch you guys over there.